One of the cooler things about Star Wars are all the weird and wacky, crazy creatures we get. I mean, the longer Star Wars has been around, kind of the wackier they are. That thing is from Star Wars? Yeah, I guess it is. All right, not to pick on the new Disney movies too much, but we had plenty of weird and wacky creatures in the original trilogy, too. They set the standard for weird and wackiness and, what Star Wars aliens would look like. And one of the crazier WTF aliens in the entire franchise is the Bomar Monk. So it's had an action figure, and this is the episode about that action figure. Let's jump in. So, first off, before we go into the figure, we should talk about what the heck a Bomar Monk is. And it was released in a very, very unique way. So, a unique figure and a unique release makes an interesting YouTube video, doesn't it? All right, so where in the world does this show up in the movie? Well, in Jabba's palace. See, there you go. See, he's crawling around there behind R2 and 3PO when they first come into the palace, and you can see one in the darkness. Here's a better shot where you can see the spider legs and that jar which contains liquid and a brain. Yep, a brain. All right, so what is it with this spider-like droid that has a brain in a jar, besides the fact that any character that has a brain in a jar is totally aces with me, because it's just such a cool sci-fi design. More characters should have brains in jars, really. I mean, kids obviously love them, and it's become a favorite with fans of Star Wars of all ages. And it was only a matter of time before we were going to get our first Bomar Monk action figure. And this was a very unique action figure in a lot of ways. So released first during the Power of the Force 2 in 1997, this figure was not available in stores. It was the first internet exclusive. All right, so let's talk about what a Bomar Monk is before we get into the figure. So, as the name implies, Bomar monks are monks. M-O-N-K, the religious monks, right? Like, the Franciscan order. They're not, it's not just an alien name. So they live in Jabba's palace, which used to be their palace, or rather their monastery. So you ever wonder why Jabba's palace looks like that? I mean, it seems odd that Jabba would build that, right? What's he going to, employ a couple rancors to put it together? So no, Jabba's squatting. He just took over a monastery that was run by the Bomar monks. This was where they went to achieve true enlightenment. So the monks started off humanoid, and, well, they could really be any species. It was an order, not a species. So a Bomar monk is not like a Rhodian or an Ewok. It is a role. They're monks. It's a religious sect. Any species is welcome. All are welcome to be Bomar monks. So what they do is when they reach a certain point, they remove their brains from their bodies and put them in these bowls and attach them to spider legs. And this is part of their enlightenment technique. It's how they let go of their physical form and learn to exist as a spider brain monster thing. So that one that's crawling around behind C-3PO in Jabba's stolen monastery, he's actually at home. He's not one of Jabba's goons. And the Bomar Monk prop was created by legendary prop master Bill Hargreaves. And he is absolutely one of the unsung heroes of behind-the-scenes Star Wars. He built all the robots, IG-88, the Probot, the Bomar Monk. He took the concept art for the Bomar Monk and turned it into a living actual prop because, they didn't have CGI back then, so everything had to be on set and real. And that's one of the things I love about the classic trilogy is it feels so lived in because things really are there. You have to interact with them physically. So, he built the Bomar Monk prop by hand from scratch, and that's one of the reasons he's such a genius prop maker, and probably why he wound up on the card back for the vintage figure. No, seriously, there really wasn't a vintage figure, but if there was, he deserves to be on it just as much as a picture of the Bomar Monk. All right, so, as I noted earlier, the Bomar Monk was an online exclusive, and this was back when online was, what is that? Because in 1997, the internet was very new, and most people were connecting with it through dial-up modems and using America Online and Prodigy. I used Prodigy. Anyone else out there use Prodigy? That was my first internet experience. So you had to log on to starwars.hasbro.com, and there were two ways to obtain a Bomar Monk. So Both ways required you to dial up into the internet. Remember that hissing sound? Hey, did I do a good job? I just made that up. All right, so the first way was you could download a form, and you could buy as many of them as you wanted. I believe it was $7.95 plus shipping. The other way was you could win one by answering some Star Wars trivia questions, which really appealed to me. And I was like, whoa, that's cool. I want to win one. So you would log on at a specific time and grab your phone off the wall. And for those of you who don't know what it's like grabbing your phone off the wall, it has nothing to do with this. It's actually a device, and you would dial and, you know. All right, so actually, no, you would answer it online. So you didn't want to use your phone. You wanted to use your modem, which was connected to your phone. It's all complicated, all right? I'm not it's a modem, it's a computer, it's this thing, right? Everyone's used to Wi-Fi now. They don't understand what modems are. The point is, you could win one, and I did. And actually, my father picked up the phone right when I was entering my address after I won and disconnected me. And I was like, no! Because if you picked up the phone back then, it killed your internet connection. But my Bomar monk still showed up, even though I was disconnected. And I was ecstatic to get one and to win one. So what you got in the mail was a white shipper box, just like back in the Kenner days. And the figure came in a blister tray that was all broken out. And it was the first figure that you actually had to assemble yourself. It didn't come fully assembled, mostly because that would have required a large pack out, which we're actually going to get to in a moment. So not only was it the first internet figure, it was the first figure that you could win, and it was the first figure that came with an instruction manual that had you actually assemble the figure. And it came in something like, I think, 12 different pieces. Either way, I don't know, maybe I'm overcounting. But the point is, you had to put them together. And in the end, you got a really impressive figure because he was big. He was, bigger than a regular 3 3/4 figure. He had a movable claw at the bottom. The legs were on ball joints, so there was a lot of articulation. And the back little part could spin around. And the balloon, I don't know what that is. I'm sure there's actually a technical thing in some Star Wars guide that explains, how the brain is kept alive. But this is it. This is your Bomar monk. And if you grew up watching Star Wars and caught that monk in in Jabba's palace, you could finally get one. Eventually, years later, it was released at retail. Remember how I said it would take a big blister pack out? Well, this was a deluxe pack out, and to give him further deluxeness, he was given 2 other characters and was called Jabba's Palace Denzians. So he came with, Wart and the little sticky guy with the tongue that I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but once we get to this pack out, I'll definitely remember it. And so this was sold as a deluxe figure, was that grouping, and it was modified a little bit from the online version. Mostly the bowl became pink, like it actually is in the movie, instead of blue. The original internet release was blue, which was not quite screen accurate. So this wasn't the only Bomar monk figure ever made. We also had a mini version of it released by Galoob as part of their kind of Action Fleet collector figurines, and so there was a droid pack that came with a whole bunch of droids. I think it's called a murder of droids. I think that's what a group of droids is. So we also had a Lego version, which is really weird because it used Ninjago samurai swords as legs. So, hey, they didn't want to tool up new parts for legs. I guess it makes sense. But every time I look at this, all I see is samurai swords attached to a robot. So, hey, whether you're being a Bomar monk by wearing a super tall hat and cloak or putting your brain in a bottle, now you get an actual action figure of one of the craziest, weirdest, and I think coolest things in Star Wars. And hey, the rightful owners of Jabba's palace.